So today I am talking about how nutrition can really support brain health. And I'm keeping it quite generic today. So I'm not focusing on one particular condition. It's all about just general brain health and how we can eat better. And as Kate said, I'm a massive foodie. I love food, I love cooking, and I'm really passionate about, yes, of course, we've got to get our magnesium and our vitamin D and our, omega-3 fats into our diet, but actually it goes way more than that. And, having a really good relationship with your food and enjoying what you're eating is also part and parcel of having a healthy diet. So I put together some slides today, and Kate, I was going to make it sort of open to questions as I was going, but maybe that's better to have at the end then, because of, or do you think it's okay to ask as we go through?
I think at the end would be better.
Better, fine.
Okay.
That's
yeah,
okay.
Thank you.
As long as you don't mind me just going rattling on for for ages. But I put together some slides. You have to my technical skills aren't great on this, but I hope you enjoy them. So yes, so nutrition and brain health. So I want to talk firstly about just a bit about the brain and what the human brain is. And so actually it weighs about 3 pounds, so just over a bag of sugar. And over half of our brain is actually fat, believe it or not. So there are lots of people who have been on low-fat diets that I've seen, and actually when it comes to brain health, it's the worst thing you could do. You need good fat in your diet. I'm going to go through some food sources in a moment, but the brain is crying out for good fat. And how it works is that fat enables your brain to communicate with all of the wonderful chemicals and hormones that we have circulating in our brain. So any of you who have been tempted, not that Rosemary Conley is around really much anymore, but it was always back in the 80s a real push to go on low-fat diets, and actually for the brain it's the wrong choice. And then the rest of the brain is actually water, protein, carbohydrates and salt. So hydration for brain health is absolutely key. And so such a simple thing as just drinking my glass of water here, more water, can make such a difference to how our brain functions. Okay, so a little bit of science here. Sounds very technical. Neurotransmitters. These are chemical messengers in our brain. And I'm just going to talk about 3 today that 2 I'm sure you've heard of, and 1 maybe not. So we've got acetylcholine, we've got serotonin, and we've got dopamine. And these are all in our brains and responsible for how we're feeling. And so if we talk about dopamine first, so dopamine is our sort of euphoric neurotransmitter. It makes us feel happy, but sort of quite motivated as well. Okay, so it gives us that get up and go. And what we know about nutrition is that there are some really amazing foods that we can incorporate into our diets to help increase the production of dopamine. So there are lots of dopamine altering drugs that often are used medically, and sometimes that's absolutely essential, but what we can do is do as much alongside that with our diet. And so the foods that would be really useful for increasing dopamine are listed below. So lots of healthy foods: apples, avocados, beetroot, coffee, funnily enough, which I'll talk about more later on. Some good dairy, so yogurt, making sure it's natural, not fruit-based. Dark chocolates, there's some nice things on that list there. So and eggs, and so these are all really easy to get hold of. And the point of today is that you'll get away with a shopping list of things you can go off and find and add into your diet. But there's a little bit of a theme there with the apples, the avocados, the beetroot. They all sort of form part of this kind of rainbow diet. And for any of you who've looked at my Instagram, although it's not perfect, it's a work in progress, I'm always talking about colour, and I did a post yesterday. I mean, the weather's so miserable at the moment, we just want to feel like there's sunshine. So if we can't get it from nature, we need to get it on our plate. So colour on our plate is, yes, it promotes dopamine production, but it makes us feel really, really pleased and really happy and content with what we're eating. And even things like colourful plates, it sounds really a funny thing for me to say, but having a lovely colourful plate can actually add to that whole experience of dopamine production. Serotonin, so I'm sure you've all heard of serotonin. This is our neurotransmitter that regulates our mood and emotion. So some people today might have been or are taking things called SSRIs, which are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. So they are antidepressants. And again, sometimes they're absolutely essential, but there's lots we can do to boost that in our diet. And interestingly, you produce about 80% of serotonin in the gut. And I'm going to talk about the gut in the next slide or two, and how the gut and the brain are basically one of the same. So foods, again, a little bit of an overlap from the previous slide: fish, poultry, eggs, seeds, spinach, soya, and nuts. So lots of good whole foods that you can add. And I put a little picture of the sun there, sunshine. So there's a condition called SAD, or seasonal affective disorder. And it typically happens from November through till end of Feb, and maybe even March now, because it's been such a dark month. But what we now know about this disorder is that actually it's not just the fact we're not getting any sunshine, and it's a sort of dull days, no sort of bright weather. It's because we're not producing vitamin D. And vitamin D is really key in producing serotonin. So for those of you who do experience lower mood during the winter, there's a real reason for it. Like I say, it's not just the days are short, lack of blue sky, it's actually we're not producing vitamin D. And so in that list of foods there, eggs and fish are two of the food sources of vitamin D, albeit quite small in percentages. You can only get about 10% from your diet. The rest of it is sunshine and supplementation. So serotonin is our wonderful, feel-good, happy brain chemical. We want plenty of that. And then we've got something called acetylcholine, so something that may be slightly less heard of, but this is the neurotransmitter responsible for memory. So we can link this to things like Alzheimer's and dementia, and there's lots of research on this neurotransmitter. So similar food groups, so eggs again, or egg yolk in particular, chicken, fish, mushrooms, beans, nuts, and dairy products. So what's very interesting about this, there's been some recent research, I didn't make reference to it, I'm afraid, but they found that there's a correlation with adolescent children and cognitive function and vegan diets. So there was quite a drive for adolescent children to be, I suppose, more aware of the environment, and they are going more towards plant-based. So plant-based is wonderful, but actually vegan diets can be quite deficient in this particular amino acid called choline, and that's what produces acetylcholine. So even without Alzheimer's and dementia, just general cognitive, memory recall, short-term, long-term, is very much dependent on having, I would say, a very balanced diet. And if you are happy to eat eggs, then eggs are really a superfood. Hope I'm not talking too fast, by the way. Maybe everyone okay so far? Thumbs up. Good, yeah. Okay. Right, a little bit more sciencey things, but hopefully I'll make it straightforward. So we've got this thing called the gut-brain axis. And us nutritional therapists have talked about the gut and the brain forever. I've been practicing 25 years and have always understood the connection between the brain and the gut. And we've always been slightly sort of dismissed by the medical profession. And someone goes to a neurologist for depression and they go, well, let's look at the brain. Someone goes to a gastroenterologist for their gut and they go, right, well, let's just look at what's going on with your gut. But we now, well, it's now, with new and more emerging science and research, these two are inextricably linked. So what's going on in your gut can have a profound effect on your brain. And that's because we have a lot of these serotonin receptors in our gut. So things like, depression, bipolar, it's really good to look at the bigger picture and not just treat the symptom. So yes, in America, there's lots of research going on with gut and brain health, and hopefully it will just, be more inclusive. And it's that sort of expression, you've all heard of that sort of butterfly stomach, the exam tummy. There's a real reason for it, because we've got so many receptors in our gut. So, it's all that expression, gut instinct, listen to your gut, all these old sayings, and they're there for a reason. So gut bacteria. This is your bacteria, probiotic, your healthy bacteria. So, and also your bad bacteria. So you have a whole mix of different bacteria in your gut, and everyone has very unique microbiomes, they're called. Your gut microbiome is your blueprint, like your DNA, I suppose. And but we know we can alter that gut through nutrition. And so eating more plant foods, eating more yogurts and fermented foods can all be really useful. And so the latest research on gut health is about trying to include as many plants as possible. So there's a real drive now to try and get us to have 30 plants a week. And you might be sitting there going, well, that's totally impossible. I couldn't eat 30 plants a week. But when you break it down, it's including fruit, veg, pulses, so all your chickpeas, lentils, nuts and seeds and spices. So actually, over the week, you can get quite a few of those in. But the bottom line is the gut loves diversity. It doesn't want the same things all the time. And a few years ago, as with nutrition, there's always diets, ketogenic, paleo, fasting, these sorts of things. So paleo diet was quite popular about 5 or 6 years ago, where it excludes carbohydrates pretty much altogether. So it's very much meat-based, dairy-based. So it's good for the neurotransmitters because they need the protein, but for the gut bacteria, they need the carbohydrate. So I'm a real believer in a good balanced diet with good protein, good fat, and good slow release carbohydrates, which I'll come on to shortly. So really fascinating. And there's just more and more research and money being put into this sort of gut-brain research. So tryptophan is an amino acid which converts into serotonin, which is our happy brain chemical neurotransmitter. So again, we metabolize tryptophan in our gut. So again, it's just fascinating. I could do a whole talk just on gut health and brain, but the bottom line is the gut and the brain. So if any of you do suffer with IBS type symptoms, bloating, pain, alternating bowel movements, then really sort of have a look into how you can support that, and taking a probiotic, eating more natural yogurt, and just having a good mix of different plants in your diet. The vagus nerve, this one some of you may have come across. This is again fascinating, the research. I'm just going to move my picture down there. So this is a nerve that runs from the brain all the way down into the abdomen. And so you can see how connected our brain and our gut really are. And this is basically like a highway of communication. So you get all of your chemicals and hormones basically feeding from one through to the next. And if you've ever had any physical therapies like osteopathy, cranial osteopathy, or acupuncture, or trying to think of another one, there's the Alexander technique. They're all looking at that kind of, they talk about the vagus nerve quite a bit and how they can tap into that energy supply. And so there are nutritional strategies to improve this vagus nerve. So like fats, omega-3 fats, probiotics, but there's quite a few things you can do, like chanting, meditation, and cold exposure. So I don't know if any of you have tried cold water swimming. I actually do it with a friend who runs a local charity, and the research on supporting the vagus nerve, lowering stress, is incredible. So if any of you are brave enough to find a lake, a pond, the sea, obviously go with someone else if it's cold, but it's absolutely amazing for nourishing this vagus nerve. Oops. Okay, right. Have I just gone to, or someone in the chat box? Hang on. Okay, there's something in the chat box. I can't quite.
So Eden said she does cold showers.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant. That's a really good starting point. Yeah, absolutely. And then there's the Wim Hof method, which has been around for a long time, and that's becoming very popular. So yeah, any kind of exposure like that can really stimulate the vagus nerve. So that's brilliant. Right, I want to talk to you about blood sugar and brain health. So I'm not talking about diabetes per se, but that is part and parcel of having unhealthy levels of or too much sugar in the blood. So basically your brain needs sugar, but not from ice cream and chocolate, sadly, but it needs sugar. Your cells respond well to it, and it's your main fuel, your main energy. So what it's saying is that any alterations in that blood sugar, whether it goes too high or too low, your brain isn't going to be happy. And in fact, Alzheimer's is now being called type 3 diabetes. So we've got type 1, which is where often it's something that people are born with, or it suddenly happens, and it means that the pancreas has stopped producing insulin altogether. We have type 2, which is considered to be an adult age-related diabetes, where over the years diet hasn't been so good, maybe weight is quite high, and the pancreas stops being as efficient. And then we have this type 3, where the sugars are affecting the brain, and they're causing plaques in the brain, which is part of the diagnosis of Alzheimer's. So having a really stable blood sugar is so important for reducing the sort of the risk of these degenerative diseases, but also just on a day-to-day basis, memory, concentration. I'm sure all of you have experienced times where you suddenly got a bit of brain fog, or you can't remember something, or you feel a little bit lightheaded, and it's largely due to blood sugar imbalance. So you've got two types of states that your body can go into. Hypoglycemia, when your blood sugar drops low. So this can happen typically after about 3 hours after you've eaten, and it might be that you are, maybe some of you trying to lose weight, and you're thinking, well, I won't eat for long periods, I might try intermittent fasting. Well, this isn't actually particularly good for brain health, because the brain just wants that nice steady supply of sugar. So you might find you feel a bit dizzy, lightheaded, a little bit spaced out, lacking mental clarity. And then you've got the opposite end, when you've got something called insulin resistance, where your blood sugar is constantly high and you can't get it into the cell, so your brain isn't taking it in properly, and you end up having high blood sugar, and you end up having too much insulin. So the risk of diabetes or Alzheimer's is actually greater. So it's just thinking about how you can eat to have a lovely stable blood sugar. And even things like feeling a bit sort of agitated, anxious, can be really brought about by having too many of these sort of blood sugar fluctuations. So if any of you do suffer with anxiety disorders, then just balancing your blood sugar, which I'm going to show you how to in a minute, is going to be a good starting point. So how do we eat to balance our blood sugar? So these are my favorite tips. Okay, so eating within an hour of waking up. We don't want to be doing intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting is something that's gained a lot of popularity over the last few years, and there are different types. There's 18-6, or 16-8, there's 12-12, there's 5-2. They're all basically ideas of trying to, generally for weight loss, people are using these protocols. But in terms of brain health, if you're going long periods without food, particularly in the morning, your brain doesn't like it. So you might feel that you're starting off feeling quite stressed, quite anxious. Your brain, the whole point of breakfast is breaking the fast. So you want to be having something ideally within that first hour of waking up. And your plate should be a combination of 3 food groups. So carbohydrates, fats and proteins. And that is looking at complex carbohydrates. So brown rice, porridge, oats, whole grain, seeded toast, that would be a good one. You've got protein, which would be your eggs or some cheese. And then you've got fats, which would be from your nuts and seeds or from smoked salmon or avocado or something. So, it's also thinking that porridge, so if any of you love porridge is brilliant, but it's still just carbohydrates. You want to add some ground flaxseed, you want to add some chopped walnuts, some berries, and you've got a really good slow release breakfast. Okay, so little strategies like that can make such a difference to just a basic bowl of porridge, make it even better for your blood sugar by having that protein and that fat. I'm a massive fan of snacking as well, little and often. Don't go long periods. If any of you get that sort of like the evening munches, that's fine, but just be mindful of what you're having. And it might just be that if you are choosing something sweet before bed, you start waking up early in the morning. So just be aware of that. And I'm very 80-20 in my approach. So of course you can have some chocolate and you can have some whatever your desire is, but just maybe go more for dark chocolate, and then it has less of an impact on that blood sugar. And I'd really avoid fruit juice. So a really simple swap. If any of you are having fruit juice, eat the whole fruit, but not the juice, because if you think about an apple's a really nice fibrous fruit. And then the minute it's been juiced, you've just got liquid sugar. So have it in its whole food form, not juiced. If you really do love juice, then I would just dilute it down with some water. And then limit caffeine. So we're going to talk about coffee in a minute, because the research actually is good in moderation, but you want to be mindful of having sort of, I would say moderation would be 2 to 3 cups a day maximum, because it just raises the blood sugar and then it crashes down again. And it's not even that you're having sugar in your coffee, it's the action of the caffeine on the blood sugar. So it goes up and then comes down again. So if any of you have experienced sort of anxiety after a cup of coffee, then that would be why. So what are the best foods for brain health? So the research really is quite conclusive in that we want to be following a Mediterranean diet or as close to it. And by that, I mean as much colour as possible. So a Mediterranean diet is pretty perfect in every sense. It's full of colour. They have obviously the climate where they grow all their lovely, wonderful, massive peppers and tomatoes and, bright colours. They also have olive oil. They also have lots of garlic. They also have lots of oily fish. They maybe not so many nuts and seeds, but they have a really good, platform of health. So it's about doing this most of the time and having, as much variety, as much colour in your diet. So these are some of the foods that have had some really good studies on them. I haven't put all the references in here, but beetroot. So beetroot is quite unique. It's a real superfood. So you may have heard of superfoods over the years, goji berries and various things like matcha, and they're okay, but actually just right in front of you in the supermarket, easy, available beetroot. It's the humble beetroot. It's so nutritious. So it's got nitric oxide in, and what it helps increase blood flow. So it helps to get blood to the brain, and also because of the color of it, it's so rich in it's called a beta-lane, which is an antioxidant, and it stops the brain or reduces the risk of the cells being damaged by free radical activity. So beetroot is absolutely brilliant, raw, vacuum packed, you name it. So you could have a nice salad for lunch with beetroot, feta cheese, olive oil, some mackerel or something on the side. Really, really good. We've got pumpkin seeds, wonderful again. So out of all the different seeds, they're particularly rich in zinc, and zinc is important for neurotransmitter production, and also full of magnesium, which is nature's tranquilizer. It's really calming, helps promote good mood, helps with sleep as well. So things like pumpkin seeds, I made a risotto last night actually, and then I just toasted some pumpkin seeds, put them on top. They're great for snacking on, they're great for putting into porridge, natural yogurt, just really versatile. And then walnuts, I always laugh about this one because walnuts look like a brain. And there's very good reason for that, because they are so amazing for brain health. So they're one of the only nuts that contains pretty much predominantly omega-3. So we have two essential fats in our diets, and we've got omega-3 and omega-6, and they're essential because we need them for life. We can't make them in the body, we have to get them from diet and or supplementation, and they are incredibly powerful in their ability to reduce inflammation. So when we think about some age-related conditions, like also hereditary conditions like Alzheimer's, dementia, there's always an element of inflammation. Most disease state, it is inflammation involved. So by having these omega-3 fats from the walnuts, it really helps to reduce that. Plus, they are rich in something called gamma tocopherol, which basically is vitamin E. And again, it's a really important antioxidant. So it helps with healthy cells and blood flow. So really great. So sprinkle them onto your porridge, or just snack on them. They are really wonderful. And then the good old egg again, superfood. So for those of you who are eating eggs, there's no cholesterol in eggs. You can have as many as you like a week, and they are a real superfood. So they've got lutein in there, which is an antioxidant, and which has always been associated with eye health actually, but now we're looking at brain health. Choline for memory, it's a good protein, it's got some vitamin D, some vitamin A. So eggs are really a superfood, and again, easy to get hold of, easy to cook with. I've got a couple of messages in the chat box. Do you want to go?
Yeah, let me just have a look for you.
Yeah.
So Dean has said, I'm allergic to all dairy, but I love cheese. I'm able to have goat's cheese or manchego. I have eggs every day, cooked in olive oil, or microwaved. I am looking at more ideas for a dairy-free diet, but keeping healthy.
Oh yeah, I think I had an email actually from that gentleman. Yeah, so I think, you know, if you know that you can't have dairy, manchego and like the buffalo mozzarella, goats, sheep's, those cheeses will be fine. And then just having as much. I mean, dairy isn't the be all and end all. If you can have the ones you've mentioned, then that will be absolutely fine. And obviously eggs, which aren't technically dairy, but eggs are great. Some fish, some, you know, and having lots of fats and nuts and seeds and legumes, get more pulses into the diet as well, like chickpeas and lentils.
Thanks, Helen.
Right, and then some more lovely food. So again, on a Mediterranean feel, so olive oil. So don't be afraid to use olive oil. Really, really good. It's best if you. I always get asked this question, so I'll say it and preempt it. But there are different types of olive oils you may have seen. You've got the light ones, which are quite yellow, and you've got the very dark green ones, and they get darker the more extra virgin they are. And so you don't have to be an absolute stickler for this, but the idea is that you would cook with the light olive oil, and then you would put the dark virgin oils over your salads as salad dressings, because the more the darker, the more virgin the oil is, the more likely it is to be damaged when it's heated. So yes, I would use the light olive oils for cooking, and then use the dark for salad dressings. You can also use coconut oil for cooking with as well. But olive oil is amazing, reduces inflammation, and it's just brilliant and easy to get hold of. And don't be afraid to have the fat, because I think like I say, there's been a wave of people who've been cutting fats out, but actually we need it for a healthy brain. And yeah, fish. So like I say, the brain is 60% fat, so it is a no-brainer, pardon the pun. We do need lots of oily fish, and if we can't, or not eating it for ethical reasons or for health reasons, then that's where walnuts are really useful. And if you just don't like fish, because you don't have to like everything I'm suggesting, that's when a supplement can be useful. So a good fish oil supplement. I think anyone with any depression, anxiety, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, anything that's affecting the brain would do very well on a fish oil supplement. And then green leafy veg, my favourite: kale, cavolo, broccoli. The greener the better. Loads of magnesium, loads of folic acid, vitamin K. These are all fantastic for cognitive function. And just get as much as you can, and every day if possible, whenever you have a meal. Whereas the green veg, when you have salad, have some rocket, watercress soup, that kind of thing, as much green in your diet as possible. And then berries. So berries have been extensively researched in terms of brain health for their antioxidant ability. Okay, so just to clarify what I'm talking about, antioxidants protect the cells in the brain from damage. And the cells, we're exposed to free radical damage on a daily basis just by walking, exercising, breathing. You know, there's going to be some deterioration, but if we can put the antioxidants in, it slows that process down. So berries are really wonderful. Blackberries, blueberries, raspberries. The darker the pigment, the better. And I would say this time of the year, I mean, we're coming into spring, so we're going to be getting more seasonal berries, but I always buy frozen berries this time of the year. So you can get them out the night before, or if you forget like me, my husband's always reminding me to stick by my own rules. I will then just warm them up in a pan and then put them into my porridge or put them into a smoothie. So frozen berries are a really good staple. And actually, they're much more reasonably priced than fresh berries this time of the year. So have a good supply of those. And then tea and coffee.
Helen,
yes.
Can I just someone's asked about rapeseed oil.
Yes. I would say no, because rapeseed is predominantly omega-6. So yes, it's quite stable cooking with, but I think I'm not such a fan of it. And I think it's becoming too commercialized or too commercially produced rapeseed oil. So it's changing in its structure. So I would stick with light olive oil for cooking and coconut oil. And a bit of butter as well, actually, is very good. I've only got a few more slides. Is it Hoppers 12, Kate?
Yeah.
No, that's okay. I'm just realising I've only got 3 more slides. Don't worry. So tea and coffee. So yes, we can enjoy our tea and coffee and feel that we're actually doing our brain some good. So moderation. You know, we know that caffeine intake can actually promote cognitive improvement, memory. It encourages good blood supply to the brain, but we don't want to overdo it. So I would say 2 to 3 cups max. And no more. And if you're having problems with sleeping, then don't have coffee after midday, or even try cutting it, you know, right back to 1 or 2 cups. But moderate tea and coffee drinking. If you get a good quality coffee as well, it's got polyphenols, which are another source of antioxidants to protect the brain. Cacao. So this isn't the same as cocoa. I haven't put a typo there. This is actually called cacao, and it is the unheat treated version of cocoa. So it's got all the nutrients, it's got all the antioxidants, it's got magnesium, it's got manganese, and really important for brain health. So you can have a nice cup of hot cacao and not feel guilty about it. Turmeric, brilliant. You know, it's become widely available now. Blood flow again, antioxidants. Chamomile and water, just good old-fashioned water. Keep your brain hydrated. 40% of our brain is water. And now, sadly, on to things to have. You may see I've put reduce, not avoid. So red meat, you know, we all know we should have less red meat. It contains saturated fat, and that can do the opposite to the omega-3 fat. So it kind of causes the blood to be sticky. It hardens the cell membranes in the brain. So all in all, it's not great to have too much. There are different red meat can't be put into one big bracket though. So if you're having good quality lean steak mince or steak, it's different to having lots of bacon and sausages, for example. But just moderation. The key thing is to have more plant foods. So if I make a spaghetti bolognese, I always use lentils alongside the meat. Sugar, we all could do with having less refined sugar. So this is your cakes, biscuits, and sugary cereals. So trying to have more natural sweeteners like dates and maple syrup is very good. But sugar does create a lot of inflammation in the brain. Alcohol, again, some of these you probably don't come as a surprise. Well, red wine, I think there are mixed studies. So moderate intake would be of some benefit because of the antioxidants, blood flow to the brain, but too much can cause mental impairment. And then processed foods, processed foods are full of ingredients that we wouldn't naturally be cooking with. And so we want to just naturally reduce our intake of processed foods. So my rule of thumb is if you're looking at something that's is shop bought, have a look at the ingredients list. If there's things in there that you think, oh, what on earth is that? But just don't buy it. So to summarize, essentially, as you've heard, what you eat in your diet can have a profound effect on cognitive health, whether that just be preventative. It could just be day-to-day, trying to get more mental clarity, or you could have an underlying condition. But the bottom line is eat more fresh foods, more plants, more oils, more healthy fats, and less processed food. And that is the recipe for a healthy brain.